Hi, I'm Vicki Haddock, authentic leadership coach and author. And today I wanted to talk to you about emotional regulation. This is one of the top topics talked about in coaching and one of the primary strengths that or muscles that I work on helping clients build. Because emotional regulation acts as a foundational quality for our whole life. Now, when I say emotional regulation, what does that mean? Emotional regulation is all about the height that our emotions go to and the depths our emotions go to, and then how long it takes to come back to this center baseline. So, what we want to do with emotional regulation over time is maybe shrink those highs, shrink the lows, and have it be a little bit more steady to the baseline. But what does that mean in reality? So, there are with all qualities, we look at what is the healthy use of it, what's the out of balance use of it, and then the underbalanced use of it. So, underbalanced use of emotions is when we have kind of just shut our emotions off and lost complete touch with the emotions that are happening in our body. The extreme case of this, we can feel very numb, and in the little bit less extreme, we feel the emotion, but we won't allow ourselves to acknowledge it. So a healthy, balanced way of emotions, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But then the opposite extreme of out of balance emotions is where we feel every emotion, not only from ourselves, but from those around us. Those of you who are very empathetic, have a high level of empathy or empathic, will know what it's like to also very intimately feel the emotions of others. And it becomes hard to distinguish which is your own emotion and which is emotion of someone else. But in that out of balance manner, our emotions rise and fall based on the circumstances around us, which can leave us feeling very dysregulated, especially when we have multiple, people around us or a boss that is having a bad day a lot of the time, and our emotions kind of regulate to that. So a more healthy zone of emotional regulation is when we look internally to regulate our emotions, and we can healthily acknowledge the emotion that we're having and then also align our action and our behavior to be authentic to that emotion. It's a much more grounded place to be because we are taking our inner cues for our emotions instead of letting the outer world dictate our emotions. So you may have fallen a trap to this idea that there are good or bad emotions. And I just want to clarify that there are no good or bad or right or wrong emotions. But the emotion that we are feeling is a messenger for us about what's happening inside of us. And the more curious we can be about what that messenger is telling us, the more we can understand our own emotions and have a better regulation of them. Incidentally, did you know that the average adult can only name between 3 and 5 emotions? They can really name happy, sad, and maybe frustrated or angry. And, there's a whole realm of other emotions out there that when we begin being better at picking more descriptive words for our emotions, they really can help us unlock and understand what's behind that emotion more. Often our emotions are tied to expectations, and expectations, when we have an expectation that something should be a certain way and it's not, then we have kind of the feeling of suffering. And, if something meets our expectation, then that feels good. But if it doesn't, we think that that's bad. And what we need to learn instead is just to say that doesn't mean it's good or bad. It just means we need to be curious about what is the expectation we're holding? Where did that come from? And is it an expectation that we want to continue to hold? Now, I like to equate emotions to the ocean because we can learn so much about our emotions from the analogy of the ocean. The ocean is composed of water, right? A body of water. And the nature of that water is to rise and to fall, to rise and to fall. That is the nature of water in the ocean. And when the winds blow or the tides are shift, sometimes those waves go very high and very low, and sometimes they're very gentle. Now, neither the height nor the lowness of the wave dictates or changes the quality of the water in the ocean. And we wouldn't say that the water is bad because it's low or it's good because it's high. It just is the nature of water in the ocean. And so if we can begin to think about our life as emotions are the nature of life, they're going to go up and they're going to come down. And the more we can accept that as the nature of life and that they are messengers for us, the more we can actually begin to surf those emotions and not draw meaning from them. So many times if people are having a negative emotion, they also begin to turn inward and ask, well, what did I do wrong? Let's say, they complete a project at work and the boss picks out the one little tiny thing that could have been done better and, doesn't acknowledge anything else. So their emotion plummets and they say, oh man, I screwed up. I wasn't diligent enough. I didn't double check it or triple check it or quadruple check it. And they begin to be very hard on themselves. And that is a misuse of emotion, right? That's our inner critic taking advantage of the situation and being hard on ourselves. And instead, what we can learn to do is surf that emotion and let that kind of emotion kind of rise and say, wow, it doesn't feel very good to have the boss point out the one thing that maybe could have been improved and not acknowledge the other 10 things. So we kind of surf that emotion of that. And then we can acknowledge that, yeah, that didn't feel very good. And as we acknowledge that's our experience, then we can let the emotion begin to subside without needing to make meaning of it. Okay. So thinking about daily when you are beginning to understand your emotions and your emotional regulation at greater depths, first of all, think about, are you on the side over here where you are over managing and over controlling your emotions so you're not feeling anything? Are you on the out of balance side over here where you're kind of like a yo-yo going up and down with all the emotions around you? And how could you come into greater balance by just noticing and acknowledging the emotion and then asking yourself if there is an expectation that either was met or wasn't met, and how that correlates to this rise and fall of emotions. And, what are we taking personally that maybe isn't our business to take personally. And then learning to just surf that emotion, let it rise, and let it fall. One last thought on that. Many people are afraid to fully feel an emotion, especially an emotion like sadness or grief, because they feel like if they open the door to that emotion, they might get caught in it and never come up out of it. And while I'll tell you, someone who has a lot of grief or sadness inside of them who hasn't allowed themselves to feel that emotion, it might take a while to let that emotion out. You might need some support and some professional support in doing that. But there is always an end to emotions. They always are going to rise. And then as long as you stay with them, they're going to begin to fall, just like a wave. Okay, I hope that that has given you some insight on emotional regulation. And and as that ties to authentic leadership, I mean, those leaders who are the most influential and the most impactful are also those who very clearly have a very strong emotional intelligence and a very strong mental or positive intelligence where they can acknowledge their own emotions, they can acknowledge the emotions of others, and they can deal with their emotions and the emotions of others in a really respectful manner. So, all right, thanks for being along today. I'd love for you to pop a comment down below about what you learned about emotional regulation from this conversation. And also, if you haven't yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, I'd love to see you follow along. And if you have a thought on a topic that you would like me to talk about, definitely please make sure and use the link in the description to submit a question for me to consider addressing in a future video. All right, have a great day.